1, 2, 3, 4.
I think what the Ramones did when they first started out was quite extraordinary, really. They were dumb, but they weren't stupid. Ridiculous, but they were very clever at the same time.
What the hell's that I've just heard? You know, Take the Needle Back. Yes, a lot of their stuff sounded the same, but that's why we like them.
They didn't vary at all. It's not like more than any other band, they kind of had this one sound and stuck with it for 30 years.
They weren't wanting to be a polished commercial band. They were wanting to produce, I suppose, dirty, attitude-laden music.
Personally, I think that's what the Ramones are all about.
Lie down on this hospital couch and have a shot of something, you know, because at the moment this is all a little bit too much for me.
That was the sound of I Wanna Be Sedated. It was first recorded in 1978 by the original lineup of the Ramones. Stripped down, unrefined, unadorned. This is rock and roll in its rawest and most glorious form.
But you started punk, kind of.
Well,
we consider it a genuine rock and roll, you know, from the gut, you know.
Rock and roll was meant for punks, and it started.
I guess Elvis Presley started
in the
mid-50s. You know?
Yeah, but punk is an answer to all the glitter and the stuff that costs a lot of money.
No, punk is just a rebellious rock for all kids, all of them.
I think when you compare Judy's a Punk to other songs like The Damned, like the Sex Pistols, like The Clash, who were later referred to as punk, it sounds very different. It's a very different kind of music. It's not as aggressive. It's not as kind of anarchic. It's quite a sort of happy-go-lucky rock and roll kind of tune.
The Ramones didn't see themselves as a punk band. They really saw themselves more as a sort of pop rock band, and they were trying to emulate Beach Boys, Jan and Dean, and quite a few other bands of that era, the sort of 50s and early 60s, but with just distorted guitars and that sort of driving beat.
I mean, I'm sure that the New York punk scene didn't refer to themselves as punk rock. I think they were a lot more arty than that. But I mean, it was something that was wholly embraced by kids in the UK that were disaffected with glam and prog and heavy metal.
Those groups in England went beyond really what you're doing as far as becoming very politically violent, safety pins through their cheeks.
They didn't do those things. There were those bands that wanted to play rock music too. It's just a fashion started from clothes stores, and the media just picked up on a few assorted people.
Yeah, how the media's into sensationalism.
And just showed them the Clash and the Sex Pistols don't wear those things.
It's got all the sort of archetypal punk signatures in there. You know, it's stripped down, very economical, and it's kind of got a snappy chorus basically. So yeah, it definitely set the standard.
The sheer speed of the performance would have left a lot of people quite shocked. Just the whole approach would have been a real eye-opener, you know, a real jaw-dropper for a lot of people at that particular time.
The Sex Pistols stole all the thunder when they exploded onto the scene, burned briefly, then disappeared. There was nothing so ephemeral about the Ramones. They played over 2,200 dates in a career which spanned over 20 years. In all that time, they never compromised the original principles which had brought the band together. The Ramones adopted an independent attitude from the very beginning. This is the independent critical review of the music of America's favourite underground band. In a peculiar pact, the 4 unrelated band members decided to adopt the same surname. They settled on the name Ramone, which Paul McCartney had occasionally used to conceal his own identity, and from the earliest days, even if it wasn't one in the literal sense, the band always had the appearance of a family.
And by the way, your names aren't really Ramon. You just didn't know.
Coincidence.
You never. It's a coincidence.
Yeah.
You just all have.
When we met in the elevator, we all have the same last name. You know?
You never give your real names, but you don't want your mothers to be subjected to that.
Disgraced.
Right.
Yeah. How'd you?
My mother just left the country, you know.
In later days, of course, the Ramones would famously become something of a dysfunctional family. Like a twisted parody of a bad TV movie plot, in 1981, Joey Ramone would find the love of his life stolen by his colleague and pseudo-Ramone family member, Johnny Ramone. Joey never spoke to Johnny again, but he took revenge in the only way he could, by penning the song, "The KKK Took My Baby Away."
The KKK Took My Baby Away was written by Joey about Johnny, who had nicked Joey's girlfriend Linda, basically. So it was a criticism of his quite conservative political beliefs.
And he uses the terminology the KKK not to imply that Johnny was a member of the Ku Klux Klan, but certainly to signify that he had right-wing leanings as far as his political thought went, and that never sat comfortably with many other members of the band. I mean, in fact, he was a nasty little fascist bastard, basically.
He's a band who, while they can't always keep it together within themselves, when they get on stage or when they make a record, they're still the Ramones and they're still a gang. And this song shows, it tells you a lot about the band. They might have hated each other, but they could still get up and rock out together.
But the internal conflict which spawned the anger of a song like The KKK Took My Baby Away was still a long way in the future when the 4 original members of the Ramones first came together. The Ramones were originally cajoled into life by drummer Tommy Aidley, who was to become better known as Tommy Ramone.
We started like summer of 1974, and we grew up together, lived in the same block, we were friends. Something we always wanted to do.
It's an unnatural phenomenon.
Can you see?
Yes, well,
Yeah?
don't do it there.
Oh,
It's not the
okay.
right spot, you know?
All right, and by the way, you know,
I was meaning to get a haircut.
but you didn't have time.
No, it's too many things to do, you know.
Tommy may have been the original keeper of the flame, but the most famous member of the Ramones is, of course, Jeff Hyman. Jeff was dubbed Joey Ramone on joining the band, and the name has stuck ever since. The most notoriously difficult figure in the band was Douglas Colvin, better known to the world as Dee Dee Ramone. Dee Dee had originally hoped to take up the role of vocalist in the band. With the discovery that Joey had the superior talent in that department, Dee Dee was given the consolation prize and was appointed as bass guitarist and backing vocalist. It was Dee Dee who would begin every song by stepping up to the microphone to bellow his trademark.
1, 2, 3, 4. Going outwards where I belong. When the days are short and the nights are long. I don't want, I better walk. And I'm sweating, I better kill. And I'm slipping, I better slip. And I'm flying, I better fly. Over out there, I better float. It's a walk,
Dee Dee was coached through the rudimentary requirements of the bass by the 4th member of the band, John Cummings, professionally known as Johnny Ramone. Johnny was uncompromising in his attitude, both to politics and to music. He had a very clear idea of what he wanted the Ramones to be. Straight down the line rock, played fast and loud, night after night after night.
Top the skin of Frisco. I beat a little chick wherever you go.
By early 1975, the band had evolved its prototype uncompromising buzzsaw sound. They had also begun to sport the trademark Ramones look of ripped jeans, sneakers and leather jackets that smacked of the coolest gang in school.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're the Ramones.
The early Ramones performances, they were furious and frenetic.
And you're a loudmouth, baby. You better shut it up.
Something like Loudmouth, for example, you know, is a perfect example of that sort of hey ho, let's go. Nothing's going to sort of stop us.
1, 2, 3, 4.
The Ramones' guitar sound is very, very, very basic. That was their trademark, and the Ramones stuck to it, you know, by fair means or foul.
You
People call it buzzsaw guitar sound, which is like, you know, like a chainsaw but quieter. They managed to achieve it by the simplest means, by just buying cheap guitars and cheap amps. So it's almost a Ramones sound by default. That's all they could come up with.
That guitar sound, I think, was integral to Loudmouth, integral to the whole album and throughout the Ramones' career. Never really changed. You knew what you were getting, basically, with the Ramones.
The Ramones were unashamedly a band who were proud of their suburban Forest Hills roots. They never tried to deny those roots throughout their years as a hard-working and successful group enjoying worldwide recognition. The stamp of the suburbs was visible in the music and the attitude of the Ramones.
Listen to My Heart it shows a slightly different side of the Ramones. It's a slightly sort of a more mature sound, perhaps.
It's a bit like a filler track to me. Not crap.
The concept of the term masterwork was something that was way beyond the Ramones at that point. They were just concentrating on doing very, very short, very simple, you know, in-your-face, highly memorable songs that just were beginning to nag into your brain, and then they'd finish.
I don't think they were particularly great love song writers in any sense of the word. Not that this is a particular love song, but I don't think they really had that in themselves that much.
They're a band with sort of dual personality. On the one hand, they were writing all these anti-social punk songs, but on the other hand, they had a real sort of heavy romantic streak, almost a kind of naivety about a lot of their songs. On the one hand, they're celebrating the fact that they're sort of freaks, but on the other hand, they're sort of wanting to be loved.
One key element of the sound was Johnny's unique guitar style. Guitarists playing a repeated chord will generally use both the downstroke and the upstroke. Johnny Ramone insisted on playing chords only on the downstroke, but it created a unique treble-tinged sound which had the effect of a heavy sound but steered the band away from heavy metal.
You can play that another way. You can play it with a down and upstroke. It doesn't actually have quite the same attack, because all downstrokes, believe it or not, it's all to do with the weight of the hand and the body and the arm. Pulling it up, you're working it against gravity. And so if I play all upstrokes, you'll hear the difference completely. Much harder to do. So that's Johnny Ramone's technique. And Dee Dee, used to use it as well. Sometimes when he'd use a plectrum, he'd play all downstrokes. So the whole band was playing downstrokes in a sense, bass, guitar, and drums. If Marky was playing, a lot of the time he used to use a floor tom by going boom 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 bam boom 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 bam. So everybody was going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. So you had this constant driving beat.
The first year of the band's development involved the inevitable round of small club dates, playing to small audiences who were often apathetic and bemused by these strange individuals crashing through a non-stop barrage of high-octane, up-tempo songs played at ridiculous speeds. The one real stronghold for the band was the legendary CBGBs, the New York club which had become known as the birthplace of punk in the US. In early 1976, even as an unsigned act, the Ramones began to draw a healthy crowd, which soon overflowed the 600 capacity club on the back of unique offerings such as Beat on the Brat.
With Beat on the Brat, I think the Ramones were being extremely clever. It had hardly any lyrics apart from Beat on the Brat with a baseball bat.
It's sticking up really for you know, the typical adolescent getting into trouble.
It's a punk rock song, but it kind of owes just as much to like 50s pop bands and doo-wop bands. It's kind of that type of almost like an innocent sounding song played fast, but when you actually listen to it, it's quite a sort of nasty, dark little sentiment, a violent song really.
And it's comical as well. This is the other thing. So I think that's the thing. They weren't threatening with their violence, although actually when you look at some of the lyrics, they are pretty violent, some of them.
It's got so much attitude. It's just fantastic. Archetypal Ramones, definitely.
On the strength of their hard work and growing audience appeal, it wasn't long before the band had an album deal with Sire Records. The advance was tiny, and the disc was recorded in 4 days, but the result was the amazing first album, released in 1976, simply titled The Ramones.
All the ingredients for a really catchy tune are there. It's got a catchy riff, it's got a catchy melody, a sing-along refrain, and yet they do it in a matter of 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes.
Hey, oh, let's go!
It is just one of the most fantastic punk records around.
Oh, oh, let's go!
It's almost beyond simple, it's beyond dumb if you like. That's kind of the brilliance of the band really.
The Ramones had a heritage that went back to bubblegum, whereas the British punks, that was a complete anathema to them. You know, things like the Bay City Rollers hated as much as they hated ELP, but the Ramones really liked the Bay City Rollers. So you'll find that, as I understand it anyway, the Bay City Rollers song Saturday Night, which goes S-A-T-U-R-D-A-Y, Saturday Night, was a direct inspiration for this track.
The second album, The Ramones Leave Home, was an apt title for a band which enjoyed its biggest success abroad. Packed with unforgettable songs like Pinhead, California Sun, Commando, Glad to See You Go, and the anthemic
Give me shock treatment.
They're most hilarious.
Gimme Gimme Shock Treatment is very much black humour, as is a lot of what the Ramones did, certainly on the earlier albums.
It's a completely typical thing for a band who's adopted this very, very dumb image to now, you know, endorse shock treatment, which arguably would make them even dumber.
They are seeing life around them and their own lives, and they're sort of turning it into a comic book through their lyricism, really, of songs like this.
It's reinforcing the idea of their sort of outsider status. We're acknowledging the fact that they're seen as sort of losers or, you know, slightly mentally unstable. And that song's playing up on that. It's the idea that, you know, they don't want to be normal, or if they do want to be normal, it's not going to happen.
In the post-Vietnam era, the wounds of the conflict were still fresh in American minds. The Ramones' response to the debate was the disturbing world of Commando.
Well, the Ramones aren't particularly noted for their sort of social commentary, but they did occasionally break away from the comic book capers, and Commando is a look at sort of post-Vietnam America.
It's different from the Ramones' earlier stuff. It shows a sort of a level of maturity, if you like, and a willingness to look at other subjects and to realise that as musicians, as rock stars, if you will, you have a voice, you can influence the way that other people think and the way that other people respond to things.
Sometimes the lyrics didn't make a lot of sense if you read them, but they make a lot of sense sung. And that's a little bit of a craft in its own right. And they were very good at that.
You're never quite sure whether it's a song that's come out of anger at Vietnam or whatever, because they quote that in their song, or whether it's just a kind of tongue-in-cheek piss take of the US military.
Arguably is a better kind of anti-war protest than anything that came about that was much more serious and more heartfelt, you know.
The idea of the Ramones as social commentators doesn't really sit well with the whole image of the band, I've got to be honest with you. So, I mean, they did occasionally, you know, take a left field step into that area, but it's not what they're best remembered for.
Glad I see you again.
It's not a song which is music by numbers as such, but it is Ramones by numbers.
It's a classic Ramones track. They've got a tried and tested formula. This is the formula that's working. Of course they're going to duplicate that formula.
Whether Glad to See You Go is music by numbers or not, the lyrics certainly aren't. The bloodbath and the Charles Manson obsession. Oh God, I mean, this is really strong stuff.
I need somebody good. I need a miracle. Should I take a chance on her? One bullet said and done. What's my I'm gonna love? You're gonna want my autograph. I need a moment of passion.
Distinctive, very easy to you know, that's the Ramones when you hear them. And is that a bad thing? I wouldn't have said so. I certainly wouldn't call it music by numbers.
You could say maintaining the same degree of stupid damn arse excitement, and I think the latter, definitely.
The Ramones went straight back into the studio to record Rocket to Russia. They came up with Sheena is a Punk Rocker, which became a genuine hit in the UK, rising to number 22 in the singles charts.
About rocket.
If punk broke in 76, 77 was the big year. By 78 it was almost all but over. So, I mean, I think that gives you an indication of how well received the Ramones were in the UK.
I hate to say it because the Americans get terribly upset, but they're always like a little bit behind the Brits. And although they say, no, we discovered punk rock, at the end of the day, they didn't latch on to punk rock until after the British people did.
The singles charts in the UK and the US vary greatly. In the US it's reliant on radio airplay, and that's how they often measure success, where in the UK it is purely about single sales, and it's probably easier to have a hit in the UK.
The fact that it didn't sell in America shows you that they just weren't tuned, they weren't on the same wavelength musically as people in Britain were, which is why the Ramones have always been far better known as a band here in the UK than they were in their home country of America.
Sheena was followed by the sublime Rockaway Beach, which also charted in the UK. With its American suburbia subject matter and upbeat sound of the summer, surely this should have been the US breakthrough.
Rockaway Beach is one of the defining Ramones moments of all time.
It's probably the most obvious reference to the 50s and 60s pop influence of the band.
It's nearly danceable if you could imagine dancing to a Ramones track, you know.
Very much inspired by the Beach Boys lyrically, there's no weighty message there, and there's no kind of, it's not even that streak of negativity which is there in a lot of the Ramones songs.
It does kind of go back to the sounds from that Ramones debut album. It's got that kind of blitzkrieg bop feel to it.
It's a really simple, straightforward song, and it sort of works, and it's got all the you know, the like the bam, 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 the sort of drum bits that makes everybody move to it.
Musically, it is extremely simple, extremely instant, if you like. It's a pop song in that you're straight into the chorus within 30 seconds.
It's just a brilliant song of a little slice of American life, a la Ramones. I mean, how many Ramones fans have made the trek to Rockaway Beach? It actually exists.
In the US, however, real success continued to elude the Ramones, who were increasingly frustrated to witness fellow new wave artists such as Blondie enjoying hit singles and the trappings of success.
The bands that you really inspired back in the mid-70s, like Blondie and these people, that have in a sense commercially eclipsed you, does that make you mad at all?
No. I mean, they took that way to do that, and play, disco music and things like that to make it. We do what we believe in, we have our integrity, and we're happy doing what we do.
The only band that stuck to its original ideals, Everybody else took the easy route, Everybody else either went the sound of Bruce Springsteen, like Elvis Costello and people like that, or they went disco, or they went reggae or something like that. We're the only band that stuck to our original idea, And
which was hard-driving rock and roll.
That's what rock and roll's all about,
Yeah.
And we're not mad. We're doing what we want to do, and we're happy doing this.
And you're making some money?
Right.
Obviously.
I mean, there's room for everybody. There's no reason to shut out one kind of music, There's room for everybody,
Frustrated by the continuing lack of commercial success and worn down by the demands of life on the road with his oddball fellow band members, Tommy Ramone threw in the towel. The remaining Ramones quickly recruited drummer Mark Bell, who inevitably became Marky Ramone. Record sales continued to be flat, but they were still respectable, and the only answer was for the band to go on producing great albums to the same formula and hoping for the long-expected breakthrough. This is exactly what they did with The Road to Ruin.
I Want to Be Sedated, I think is the greatest ever, God, I don't want to be on the road anymore kind of song.
Musically, a band is bound to have changed over the course of a few years. They've had a bit more time in the studio, they've had more time writing records, so it's almost like they've managed to hone in on that sound, they've managed to develop it, although it's quite clearly, obviously, a Ramones song. It's got that typical Ramones sound to it.
it's that weird sort of mix which the Ramones achieved. It's singing about sort of things which are obviously quite serious, but putting a kind of comic book edge to it all, to make it sort of more accessible for the radio and accessible for the fans who kind of can relate to what the Ramones were singing about in this song.
It's a perfect example, really, of what they were doing in those early days, and how they did it brilliantly. I mean, it's something that they never managed to replicate, really, as time went on.
The band finally bowed to outside forces and in 1980 employed Phil Spector to produce the next album, End of the Century. It brought the band to a wider audience in Europe at least, but for the hardcore fans, the magic had begun to dissipate.
Rock, 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 rock on high school. Rock, rock, rock on high school. That's not where I wanna be. Rock, rock, rock on high school. I just wanna have some kicks. I just wanna get some chicks. Rock, 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 rock on high school. Well, the girls out there make me out, you know. Rock, rock, rock on high school.
The End of the Century was an album where the Ramones kind of got to indulge their 50s and 60s pop fantasy by bringing in Phil Spector. It was a sign of a band who had some commercial success and were able to kind of bring in this guy who they knew had made all their classic records growing up.
Spector obviously was famous for producing a lot of the bubblegum acts of the 50s and 60s that so influenced the Ramones. So you'd think the partnership would work out really, really well. For whatever reason, I don't think it really took off at all.
End of the Century is their biggest selling record, certainly in America. And despite the continuous debate as to what Phil Spector managed to do with the Ramones sound, still remains one of the most listenable albums and has some of the best Ramones songs that they ever wrote.
Phil Spector doing your album End of the Century, that must have been quite a buzz to work with that man.
Yeah, well, he approached us 3 years ago in Los Angeles and told us he wanted to make a comeback and he was looking for somebody original and doing something different.
Right.
And he told us he was a big fan of ours and that he wanted to do an album together.
Even looking at the cover, it just looks too clean, too perfect. Yeah, I remember seeing it in record shops at the time and thinking, oh,
Some people think, Phil Spector and the Ramones, weird. But actually it wasn't weird, although it turned out to be pretty weird. And the Ramones, I think, threw themselves at his mercy to a certain extent because of who he was. Where perhaps, maybe they should have said, oh, actually, Phil, I think we should play it like this,
I think history has proven that it was definitely an album they needed to make at that point because they were really kind of treading water, and I think it gave them a new lease of life.
If you take the album as a celebration of the Ramones' love of of 50s music, you know, as interpreted by Phil Spector, then it really, really works. But I think it's got to be taken in isolation to the rest of their catalogue.
It's our brand new single, We Want the Airwaves! What did they know?
We Want the Airwaves is probably the most unusual Ramones track because it really does sound like an attempt to be a pop band in the sense of, okay guys, I'm your new producer and we're going to do it like this, you know.
The song really displays a sort of a slightly rockier side. It's almost like a sort of, well, maybe we'll try and change our sound slightly. Maybe this will get us some airplay if we take a slightly rockier sound.
Do you get a lot of airplay?
No,
Why not?
because radio is like television, and all they want to do is push crap on the public. Not this show. This show is one of the better shows on television. I'm talking about. I mean, I'd say something bad about this show too, but I just feel that way. I mean, I'm just talking about situation comedies and things like that.
On, if that's what you
right.
Yeah.
I'm talking about situation comedies.
But what about
like
radio?
radio?
Yeah, that must make you mad because you really, you really thrive. I mean, you survive on airplay, don't you? You need that to sell your records. So.
Yeah.
Well,
it helps.
Radio just turned into a big business. It's you know, just pushing mediocrity and just like it's just, all they care about is money now. Like take the '60s, it was definitely the most innovative time in the history of rock and roll and radio, where they play everything and they look for new things to play. And the DJs were the hip people, and they turned us onto the Beatles and various people like that. I mean, nowadays, you know, the DJs could care less. It's just a salary, and it's just radio's totally sterile. You know, it's
They play their hit
formulated
list.
and homogenous.
You don't really need it, though.
Really?
We haven't had it, and we're getting along just fine without it. And kids don't, just because there is no radio doesn't mean that kids have to be stuck with mediocrity and not thinking. They just have to discover things on their own, whether it's us or anyone else.
But yeah, I mean, I Want the Airwaves is you know, them saying, look, this isn't fair. Predominantly, probably in their home country. I mean, although by that point their success was slowly waning, even in the UK. But yeah, that would have been, you know, a direct statement saying, hey, we're good enough, and they were. You know, why aren't you playing us?
It's like they're venting their frustration, but they're also saying at the same time, we're not going to kowtow to you anymore. You know, we've written some great commercial stuff in the past. You haven't played it. Just forget it.
It's not a band who is sat being bitter about their lack of commercial success. Or if it is bitterness, it's kind of wrapped up in irony and tongue-in-cheek, sardonic humour.
It was still played with enough anger and attitude for it to be the Ramones. But musically, it was completely off-beam. Maybe they decided they were bored, you know, and they decided to try something different.
Pleasant Dreams is not as good a record as End of the Century.
Pleasant Dreams is a very different album for the Ramones.
Pleasant Dreams, I think, is a weird album in the Ramones canon, if you like. It's a pop album, to be honest with you. It really is.
It's the band moving into the 80s and moving into slightly harder, it's not heavy metal, but it is more towards a harder rock sound.
It has none of that kind of underground garage punk sound as the early stuff.
I think as a result, something was lost along the way.
You know, it was almost like the baseball bat was in the back pocket now, and they were doing something a little bit different. You can't beat on Bratz forever, admittedly, but that overt poppiness, I think, did confuse people at the time.
The humour's still there in songs like the KKK Took My Baby Away, but it's not exactly kind of throwaway humour, and there's almost a sense of unease within the band. That sense of tension, which was always there, is kind of seems to rise to the surface.
The production is the major problem. I think it's still got some great songs on it, but the production is the main problem. It's just too clean to qualify for punk.
Well, the production's not bad. It's a bit more sort of heavy metal than punk, I suppose. And I mean, although the Ramones have got a kind of a hard rock base to their sound, they weren't a heavy metal band. And never should have been.
Goldman, the producer, really directed the band away from their roots, and that was part of the problem.
You listen to Pleasant Dreams and Goldman really doesn't understand the band, but would you expect a bloke that wrote I'm Not in Love or The Things We Do for Love, right, to understand what the Ramones are about? I don't think so.
End of the Century was End of the Century, and it was heralding a new direction. Pleasant Dreams takes that new direction one step further.
But I think they realised that, punk rock at this point had changed into something else. Already new wave had come along, heavy metal was emerging, and as sort of godfathers of punk rock, which they were sort of increasingly being called, even though they were still a relatively young band, they realised that they had to diversify.
The band's craving, I think, for radio play, for respectability, for mainstream acceptance, really harmed them at those latter stages.
They never really had their day. Although in hindsight, they're regarded as one of the great punk bands of New York, the godfathers of the New York punk scene. They never really enjoyed a level of commercial success as some of the other bands that were around at that time.
So many bands have tried to do what the Ramones did, but they never quite get there because they just had their own sound. They took a template which worked for 50s and 60s bands, but kind of made it their own and made it rock and roll, if you like. Dress it in black leather and play it very loud.
But you know, those early Ramones shows, kind of all the songs would have blurred into one. It would have just been real, you know, breakneck speed, furious rock music that, you know, had that kind of punky edge to it.
My personal opinion is I don't think they could ever get back to real business as usual that they had in the very beginning.
They wanted to be loved, the Ramones, basically. They really did.
Despite the fact that the band would never receive huge commercial success, they always commanded the respect and plaudits both from their contemporaries in the music business and the hundreds of bands which came after them. Everybody who is anybody with punk leanings, from Nirvana to Green Day, has publicly paid homage to the men from Forest Hills and acknowledged the Ramones as the band which inspired 1,000 careers and lit up millions of lives.